My daughter-in-law stood on the brownstone stairs with a tape measure and said, "Pack your bags. The buyers want a quick close." 2 days later at the title office, the woman behind the glass asked for the LLC manager's consent, so I slid her a resolution with my signature at the bottom. In Brooklyn, disrespect doesn't always shout. Sometimes it dresses nicely and arrives with a tote bag, calling itself efficiency. People will smile while they move your chair an inch to the left, then call it better flow. I've learned to keep a pen in my pocket the way other women keep lipstick, because some days you need ink more than color. My name is Mabel Ortiz. I came to this block in 1971 when everything was louder and cheaper, and the tree out front was so thin I could put my thumb and finger around it. That tree has grown into its job. So have I. My husband, Raphael, and I raised our son, Julian, in the top-floor apartment, right under the roof that moaned during winter like an old man getting out of bed. When Rafa died 10 years ago, I kept the house and the stovetop and the habit of feeding people who look like they forgot how. Julian married Vanessa, a woman with a beautiful walk and a schedule for feelings. She runs a staging company, makes empty places look like someone would love them if only they could afford to. Vanessa can light a candle and make it sound like a business plan. I practice patience the way Catholics practice Lent. It started with small updates. She called my plants Too Alive for the minimalist theme and replaced them with sticks that looked like regrets. She took down the picture of Rafa on the stoop because it dates the space, and I swallowed my comment because sometimes silence is a broom. One Tuesday, I came home from the market with collards and a little bag of guava paste, and there was a private showing happening in my living room. A couple in soft shoes admired my windows as if they had done something besides sit there and be faithful. The realtor smiled at me like I was a charming antique that came with the property. Vanessa handed me a cup sleeve with no cup, as if comfort could be implied. "What is this?" I asked. "Just feedback," she said. "Low stakes. Brooklyn is hot right now." "Brooklyn has been hot since August 1971, I said. She didn't laugh. My son arrived late, cheeks flushed with the apology that lives in men who don't enjoy conflict, but marry people who alphabetize it. "Mom," he said softly, "we're thinking it may be time. Smaller place. New start." "For whom?" I asked, and he didn't have an answer that could look me in the eyes. I didn't raise my voice. I went to my bedroom where the air still remembers my grandmother's perfume and took a black binder off the shelf. On the spine, in white letters that have not faded, it says Carter Street Holdings, LLC. When Rafa was sick, a friend who knows property said, "Mabel, put the house into a family LLC. It'll help you manage things. Don't let the world push you around because you're tired." So we did. Rafa and I signed an operating agreement at the kitchen table with a notary who smelled like peppermint and kept tissues in her purse. Rafa put in this house. I put in my small savings and the work of 60 years. We made me the 51% member and manager until death or resignation. "You'll always have the deciding vote," Rafa said, kissing the pen like the old romantic he was. "Even when I'm not here to argue gently." I kept that binder and the habit of reading before crying. The night after the showing, while the block hummed with the kind of gossip that keeps porches company, I reread the operating agreement the way some women reread love letters. Page 4 still said, "Members, Mabel 51%, Julian 49%. Page 7 still said, "Manager, Mabel Ortiz, removable by members holding a majority." Page 12 still said, "Major actions require manager consent, including selling the brownstone or entering any contract to sell." The words had not gotten the memo about Vanessa's timeline. Vanessa knocked lightly and came in without waiting, the way people do, who think politeness is for other folks. "I booked the photographer," she said. "We need the living room. Minimal. No Afghans, no saints, no—" She looked at the binder on my lap. "What is that?" "Recipes," I said, and clicked the rings shut like a door. The listing went live anyway. Photos of my home stage to look like it had never known spaghetti. The comments said sun-drenched and prime location and rare opportunity. The way people talk about whales washing up. Vanessa scheduled back-to-back showings. I baked bread and pretended not to notice strangers mapping my kitchen like cartographers of desire. On a Thursday, a contract appeared on the table. Accepted offer. Vanessa's smile was the confident kind that expects applause. "We close in 30 days, she said. "Start packing. We'll set you up in a sweet little place. Elevator, laundry, lots of light." "I have light," I said, and looked at the window that had kept me company for 53 winters. "Don't be sentimental," she said. "This is a strategic move." I took a breath that visited my whole body. "I'll need to see the LLC paperwork you've been sending to the title office and the buyer," I said. "It's boilerplate," she said. "Julian signed the seller docs." "Julian is a 49% member," I said gently, "and not the manager." Her eyes flickered. People who live by arrangements do not like to be reminded that arrangements include them. That night I called Marisol, my neighbor who has 2 gifts. She can sew anything and she can read anything. "Come for tea," I said. She came with a thimble on one finger and indignation on the other. We looked through the binder like it was a map to a city that still exists. "Do you want a war?" she asked. "I want a meeting," I said. "Paper. Knows how to behave if you invite it properly." We drafted a member notice, emergency special meeting of Carter Street Holdings LLC. Agenda, removal of manager and appointment of new manager. Sometimes you must fire yourself in order to make a point and then rehire yourself with better boundaries. We wrote the resolution in careful words. Resolved. Members holding a majority hereby remove Vanessa Ortiz, purported manager without authority, and affirm Mabel Ortiz as manager. Resolved. No sale, listing agreement, or contract is authorized without manager's written consent. Resolved. Manager is directed to notify the title company and buyer's attorney that any prior purported consents are void. We signed, dated, and stapled with the small ferocity of women who keep receipts for a living. In the morning, I slid a copy under Julian's door and texted him. "Member meeting at 6. Love, Ma." He replied, "Okay," the way sons do when their whole childhood is tapping them on the shoulder. At 6, we sat at the kitchen table that has seen more speeches than City Hall. I had 3 chairs, one for me, one for Julian, one for Vanessa, if she decided to be a person and not a calendar. She arrived late carrying a fabric swatch book like an argument. "What is this?" she said, waving the notice. "A meeting," I said, "of members of my company." "You can't just—" "I can," I said, and pointed to the page where it says I can. And I did. Julian looked at the papers, then at me, then at his wife. "Nessa," he said softly. "Mom is the manager." "She's old," Vanessa said. "No offense, Mabel. We need a manager who moves faster." "I move at the speed of ownership," I said, "which is slower than Instagram but faster than regret." We held the vote. It was not dramatic. We raised hands. 2 of us with 51% of the voice and 1 of us with volume. We signed the resolution, and I printed my name neat so no one could pretend not to read it. Vanessa left, stiff as a curtain rod. Julian kissed my head like a boy who just remembered where the key is kept. The next day, we went to the title office because paper should hear the news from the source. The woman behind the glass wore a sweater the color of rules and had a stack of files that looked taller than reason. "We have an executed contract," she said without looking up. "You have a purported contract," I said, sliding the resolution under the window. "Here is the operating agreement. Here are the member schedule and manager provisions. And here is the manager's certificate. Mine," she read. Her face did a small thing that looks like a person bumping into a wall in a dark hallway and then flipping on the light. "We'll need manager consent to proceed," she said. "Do you consent?" "I do not," I said. "And if a closing is attempted without me, please call the police, the Pope, and my neighbor Marisol, in that order." She smiled despite herself. "We'll mark the file on hold." That evening, Vanessa staged a scene in the living room, the kind of scene people call conversation when it's really choreography. "You embarrassed us," she said. "The buyer's attorney called. Do you know how unprofessional this makes us look? I have looked unprofessional my whole life and somehow still fed people," I said. "You will live." Julian paced by the radiator, a man heating up to boil. "Why didn't you tell us about the LLC?" he asked. "Because men with good hearts sometimes hear truth like a suggestion when the person they love arranges the flowers around it," I said. "This was not a suggestion." He sat. He put his head in his hands the way boys do when they realize geometry has feelings. "What do you want, Ma?" "Respect," I said, "and control over my home until God himself says otherwise. After that, you can sell the bricks to artists if you like." "What about money?" Vanessa said, a word that always tastes like metal when it leaves certain mouths. "The offer is high." "Then the offer can be high later," I said. "With my signature, or not at all." She rolled her eyes toward the ceiling like there was an audience up there. "You're impossible." "No," I said. "I'm incorporated." For a week we did not speak of it. I cooked for Leo. Macaroni that tries to be a hug, and helped him with spelling words, neighbor, agreement, promise. Vanessa left her staging catalogs on the table like brochures for a country I never intended to visit. Julian mended a step on the stoop and practiced apologizing to both of us with equal sincerity. Then the buyer's attorney emailed me directly. Marisol had helped me set up an address called Mabalatha Block because my neighbor believes in modernity. He asked for my manager's consent and enclosed a draft. I replied, "No consent. Unauthorized contract. Please be advised sale will not close." It felt like lowering a window in a rainstorm and finally hearing quiet. They tried a workaround. You can always count on a clever person to misunderstand you on purpose. They sent a new document naming Julian as Manager for Limited Purpose of Closing. I sent back the page with 3 words circled, and below it I wrote, "Not how this works. At the final conference, because people like endings even when nothing ends, we all sat with the title officer." She looked around the table like a mother checking that each child had their lunch. "We cannot insure title," she said. "No, manager consent. File is withdrawn." Vanessa stood up so fast her chair protested. "You win," she said, like a person who thinks life is a tournament. "Enjoy your drafts and radiators." "I enjoy my votes," I said. "The radiators are extra." The next morning, the block woke up to a new smell. Soup. I put a pot on the stoop. Yes, the stoop, because Brooklyn is a kitchen if you're brave. And taped a sign to the railing. Stoop Kitchen. Thursdays at 6. Bring a bowl if you have one. I called it a soft opening because I have learned from women like Vanessa that everything sounds more expensive with the right adjective. People came. They always do. To warmth. A nurse who works nights. A teacher who is better at teenagers than anyone deserves to be. A man who repairs shoes and carries stories in his pockets. A dancer with sore knees. Leo with a ladle that looked too big for his small seriousness. We set bowls on the top step and left space for the mailman and the gossip and any angels who forgot how to be invisible. Vanessa came too, hovering at the bottom like a person reading a menu of humility. I handed her a bowl. "It's just lentil," I said, and she nodded as if lentil had finally received its PR. After we ate, she stayed to help fold chairs. "I was wrong," she said finally, voice small but not fragile. "Not about the market, about ownership, about you. I thought paper was decoration." "Paper is behavior," I said. "It tells people how to act when they forget." Julian came out with a tray of cups and smiled, tired in the way a man gets tired when he is rebuilding something that was never supposed to be crooked. He took Vanessa's hand, the human version of a resolution, and I was briefly and unexpectedly moved by how much love can look like good posture. It wasn't perfect after that. She still moves objects when she's anxious, and I still label the freezer shelves like a librarian. But when a new buyer tried to send a letter, exploring interest, they sent it to me. And when Vanessa booked a showing without asking, she unbooked it with an apology and a quiche. I know peace when I see it. It looks like a child doing homework on a table that someone once tried to sell from under you. A month later, I hosted an LLC class at the Stoop. 3 women from the block who own walk-ups and 1 from across the avenue, who owns nothing but common sense. We talked about operating agreements, consent, and the value of learning to say no, thank you in writing. I brought the binder and let them turn pages like a hymn book. Vanessa set out napkins without an opinion and asked if anyone wanted more pepper. Julian fixed the sticky lock on Mrs. Alvarez's gate, not the title officer. Different Alvarez. This one bakes flan. The tree out front is thick now, a good guardian. Sometimes I rest my palm against its bark and remember years when I thought memory was weaker than money. It's not. It just needs a binder. Last Thursday, a young couple paused at our stoop and said, "We love your block. Is it friendly here?" I pointed to the chalk on the sidewalk where Leo had written, "Every Thursday." Soup in letters that lean forward like they are trying to grow up. "We're a company," I said, "in every sense." If someone leans toward me again and says, "Pack your bags. We sold the house," I will lean back and say, "Bring your operating agreement. Mine is having soup." Mabel Ortiz.